Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 5:35 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, August 21st, and we're going to break down a couple of slates today. So before we get into all of that, a couple things to point out. Above, Fantasy Draft is going to be sponsoring this video and a few more videos upcoming, and pretty much what you get there is you get rake-free DFS. 30% of the people lose their money just to rake, which means that's what Draftkings and FanDuel are taking from you on average. The average person loses 30% of their money pretty much right off the top to the site. Rake-free DFS is allowing you to kind of make a subscription package based on how much you pay over on Fantasy Draft, or you don't have to. You can continue to play over there for lower industry rakes. You can check it out. It's Fantasy Draft. It's going to be linked down below in the description. And also, if you want to check anything out down below in the description, there's free strategy guides from myself. There's my NFL daily fantasy course, as well as my Patreon content, where I'll have an MLB podcast later in the day where I go over and discuss exactly who I am playing. Yesterday, we were all over Sonny Gray was our number one pick with our Aaron Sanchez and Sonny Gray were our two top wants, and it worked out pretty well. You can get that down below. Lots of things down below. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. Hit the subscribe button, and we're going to get right into this video today, gang. But before we do, if you're looking for the night slate, the 11-game night slate, hit the link in the description. It's going to be a time code. It'll take you right to where that starts because I'm briefly going to cover the 3-game early slate. So if this is after 12:30 or you just don't even want to look at the early slate and you don't care about it and all you want to know is about my takes on the night slate and what I'm doing there, you can hit the link in the time code down below. It'll take you right to where that starts. But for right now, let's get started with the 3-game early slate real briefly, quick slate, and hit the like button if you can. We'll be kind of comparing the DraftKings and Fantasy Draft prices a little bit here and there to see if there's any discrepancies. But starting off, it's a 6-game slate. You're going to have 2 pitcher openers. Max Strom's actually going to open this game for San Diego. And then you're going to get Corey Guerin opening the game for Wade LeBlanc. So with that said, there's 3 pitching options on the slate that I think are viable and I think are good. Actually, I guess 4, but the 3 that I'm going to be getting to. Charlie Morton is just the obvious one at $11,100 on DraftKings. He's $21,600 on Fantasy Draft. The guy goes the deepest into the game at 6 innings pitched per start, just gives up absolutely no damage. 0.69 home runs per 9. That's going to be the best in the slate. It's going to be best in the entire slate if you factor in the night slate outside of a small sample Patrick Sandoval. This guy's just absolutely ridiculous. 34.1% hard hit percentage, 48.7% ground ball rate, both really good. 33.5 strikeout rate against lefties. Seattle is loaded with lefties, so the fact that he leads the entire slate today with 33.5 by 2% over Lucas Giolito is very attractive, and they strike out 26.3% of the time versus righties as a team, Seattle. That's going to be tied for the highest on the slate with the White Sox. You factor all those in, he gives up absolutely no power to righties, 0.92, no power to lefties, 0.144, $11,100 on a small slate like this is too cheap. Like, he should be the Justin Verlander price for the later slate, which is $12,000. Best Sierra on the slate, just everything for this guy adds up today. The run total, if we go to quickly what the run total is going to be for this 3-game slate, the run total is even better. You're going to get a 3.2 implied run total right now, 0.5 lower than the next closest on the entire slate. Obviously, Charlie Morton becomes a very interesting play and a guy that you should probably try and prioritize depending on where you're going with your builds, depending on what ownership looks like. Not sure which site you use for ownership. But the second interest I'll have is Luis Castillo. So, look, you get a huge drop-off after Morton to the next group of guys. $1,300 drop-off to Giolito. Then you get $2,300 drop-off to Castillo. Well, Castillo seems to be way too cheap today. So if you could somehow fit in a Charlie Morton and a Castillo, I kind of like that direction. If not, using Luis Castillo as your SP1 and just fading Charlie Morton and what could potentially be higher ownership. Again, if Morton's highly owned, I'm fine getting to Castillo as my SP1. If he's not highly owned, people are making a mistake, and he should be highly owned, so I'll get to Charlie Morton. But Castillo at $8,800 is just dirt cheap for his upside against San Diego today. They lead the slate on the season with a 26.1% strikeout rate. Since the start of June, they have a 25.9% strikeout rate, so it's just balancing it all out. Whatever split you look at, they strike out a ton, around 26%. You have Castillo, who's going to strike out 30.3% of lefties. There'll be about 2 to 3 lefties in this lineup, but then he also strikes out 27.2% of righties. And that's not even the thing that I like the most out about him. Sure, you have to have home run, or not home run, you have to have strikeout upside home run if you're a hitter. You have to have strikeout upside as a pitcher in DFS to have any sort of reason to pay $8,800, at least in my mind. But when you have a ground ball rate of 54.4% and a fly ball rate of 27.9, both the highest on the slate, both extremely elite, that's going to bode really well for you. A 1.09 home runs per 9, 3.98 Sierra. The only thing that's bad about Luis Castillo is his 10.1% walk percentage. I'm not too concerned about a walk percentage when it's not really translating to many runs due to the Sierra. It's not much hard hit percentage after that, 36.6%. So when he does walk a guy, it's not like it's leading to a lot of damage more times than not, like potentially Jake Odorizzi does when he walks 9% of batters and has a 44.2% hard hit percentage. It's leading to lots of double plays, right? You get a high ground ball rate and just lots of outs in general. You have a lot of strikeouts. You have a lot of ground balls and not a ton of hard hit contact. So Luis Castillo at $8,800, and I believe San Diego has the second lowest. Yeah, San Diego has a 3.7 implied total. So I mean, 3.2 is obviously extremely low. 3.7 though, it's not like nobody's hitting no damage off of him. Vegas doesn't think anybody's doing anything. And the thing that I like even more is that it started as a 3.9 total for San Diego, and now there's more confidence that it's dropped to a 3.7 implied run total. So no extremely high run totals on the slate, but that's Luis Castillo today seems like a very, very good play. I'm going to be interested in seeing where the ownership comes on. A 3-game slate is going to be naturally huge ownership. The idea of stacking Charlie Morton with Castillo, if you can find just one cheap bat 3-man stack to fit everything else in, I do like a lot. The idea that it is a 3-game slate and you don't have to stack, I'm kind of on the fence about a 2-game and a showdown slate. Yeah, I don't think you have to stack. A 3-game slate, I think the correlation is enough there that if one of these 6 teams scores 9 runs today, you're going to need it, obviously, in my mind. Now, can you win by these 3 teams just stacking and picking off 4 or 5 home runs? Yeah, but it's clearly extremely difficult. So it's going to be Charlie Morton, Luis Castillo, my first 2 interests. And then my third and final interest on this 3-game slate before we get into the main slate is Jake Odorizzi at 7,700. Jake Odorizzi at 7,700, and I'll point out that Luis Castillo's $8,800 price tag, him being $1,000 cheaper than Lucas Giolito on DraftKings, it's even better. It gets even better. He's $2,100 cheaper than Giolito on FantasyDraft. So it's a slightly better value on FantasyDraft, but it's already an incredible value on DraftKings. So wherever you're going to buy Castillo today, you're getting a very good overall value. The difference between Charlie Morton and Giolito is pretty much the same across DraftKings and FantasyDraft. So when we get down to Odorizzi now, Odorizzi is going to be $1,100 cheaper than Castillo on DraftKings. He's going to be $1,400 cheaper on FantasyDraft. So it's about the same when it kind of boils down to it. You're not getting any value anywhere else. But what you're liking out of Odorizzi the most today is his matchup. Now, I much prefer Castillo. I much prefer Charlie Morton, but the price is going to be indicated of that, right? $1,100 savings off Castillo, then you're going to get a $3,400 savings off of Charlie Morton. Now, Odorizzi does have decent strikeout stuff, but it mainly comes against lefties. 26.5% of the time he strikes out lefties. You'll get John Jay in this lineup, maybe batting fourth. You'll get 2 to 3 switch hitters. But for the most part, you're not going to get a ton of righties, or a ton of lefties. So he strikes out righties at 23.8%, right around average, not for this slate, but in the league, that's around average. Gives up no power to righties, 127 ISO, which is very good. And this team overall only has around a 126 ISO against right-handed pitching since the start of June. They strike out the most on the slate, marginally over Seattle at 26.4% of the time. And they're going to be in a ballpark today in Minnesota that is pitched to be one of the top 5 most pitcher-friendly parks on the year. So Odorizzi, when you also factor in that the White Sox today, I believe, have 3.9. Yeah, 3.9 implied run total, 4 teams under 4 today. These are the 3 pitchers that I have interest in. Odorizzi, $7,700. If you're trying to get to a stack that you like the most, I believe right now Tampa has the highest implied total on the entire slate because they're going up against Wade LeBlanc and his 2.14 home runs per 9, his only 14.3% strikeout rate against righties, and all the damage in the world that he gives up, 340 to lefties, ISO 210 to righties. Tampa Bay has a 5.5 implied run total. After that, Giolito is going to be going up against Minnesota, whose second highest run total of 5.2. So I do like the idea of getting to Tampa Bay. It's going to probably be chalky. And then after that, Cincinnati against a Matt Strom opener, and then a Corey Drin, who seems to be really good as of right now in terms of a .67 home run per 9. But this is a guy who's going to pitch 1 to 2 innings. He just got called back up to the majors. There's not going to be much depth there. So I do like Charlie Morton, Lucas Giolito, and Jake Odorizzi, depending on the stacks you get to. I think Luis Castillo makes a lot of sense as either an SP1 or an SP2 if you can fit it and swing it. Tampa Bay and the Reds seem like really good stacks today. Minnesota against Giolito is fine. Minnesota has a 5.2 implied run total. I'd just rather get up to Tampa or go down based on pricing, but we'll see what ownership looks like. So that's it. We're going to go to the 11-game slate. So we are now starting the 11-game slate, so if you were here, thank you. If you hit that skip button, all good. We covered the 3-game slate pretty quickly. If it's after 12:30, I totally get it. Let's get into this 11-game slate. 22 teams on the slate, and as of right now, I only got 4 guys grade, which for me means that on my sheet over here, it means that they are going to be interests of mine. So 4 of them are the only ones that I have interest in as of right now at 5:44, 13 hours and 15 minutes, 16 minutes to be exact, until lock. Things are going to change. There's a couple guys that I'll touch on in terms of being somewhat interested due to run totals, due to their overall skill set, but the matchup just kind of milks it down a little bit. So the first guy, obviously, Justin Verlander. It should be obvious, $12,000 against Detroit. The guy's $500 to $600 too cheap today. $12,000. He's a minus 490 favorite. I've yet to see a minus 500 favorite this year in the MLB. This is the highest I've seen now. You're getting arguably a top 3 pitcher in the entire league, even though he's struggling with some home run problems really throughout the season with a 1.64 home run per 9, 42% hard hit percentage, 33.7% ground ball rate. But you're getting one of the best pitchers in the league 3.06 SIERA. Even with those home runs, he still has the best SIERA on this slate by a mile. He still has one of the best SIERAs in the entire league. 5.24 walk percentage. That's really elite. 37.9% strikeout rate against lefties. That's tied with Patrick Corbin for the highest on the slate. 37.9 is just a ridiculous number if you think about it. There's going to be probably 2, maybe 3 lefties in the Detroit lineup, but no big deal because he strikes out 31.5% of righties, which is the second highest on the slate, only behind Yu Darvish. So 34.7% strikeout rate overall, highest on the slate out of the early slate, out of the late slate, one of the highest in the entire league. Now, his problem is he does give up power. 190 ISO to lefties, 216 ISO to righties. You're going to get the Pistol Pete offense of this this Detroit team here, who has a 153 ISO against righties. That is bottom 3 on this slate. Only teams that have a worse ISO are Miami, which we know how terrible they are. Say a little gnat here. Miami, which you know how terrible that they are. And then below that, you have the Royals, which we know how bad they've been as of late. But then also Detroit strikes out 25.8% of the time versus righties since the start of June. Second highest on the slate. Verlander's just in a fantastic spot. The guy goes 6 2/3 innings or 6.51 innings pitched per start. Highest on the slate, slightly edging out Mike Minor. And that's in an average start. This is a spot against Detroit where as long as Verlander is Verlander today and baseball variance doesn't take over and he throws out his arm or he starts to become broken like Chris Sale and then he goes on the DL 3 weeks later after everybody burns all their money on him, Verlander should be going 7 innings at minimum here, should be in line for 10 plus strikeouts. The guy does it against really good teams. He's facing what I would say, when you combine strikeout rate and when you combine their current lineup, the worst lineup in the MLB. Yes, I think this lineup is worse than Miami's lineup in the MLB. Now with no Nick Castellanos, I believe Castellanos had another homer yesterday. Could be wrong on that one. But yeah, Verlander versus Detroit. It's obvious. $12,000. I'm going to be getting to him. I'm not going to have any secrets there. He's going to be a guy I talk about later on in the Patreon podcast. He's going to be a guy that just makes a ton of sense, and it's not something that I want to get away from. And I'm hoping that the 11 games, 22 other pitchers, or 21 other pitchers on the slate, and the fact that it's just going to be a big slate overall, paired with that he's $12,000, and hopefully restricts some of the things you can do with stacks, or at least in theory does. I'm hoping his ownership just stays at 20% or below. It's fine. I'm fine if it's at 20%. If it gets to 30, 35%, I'm still fine because this is the Detroit Tigers against Justin Verlander. It's a minus 490 favorite, and this man has all the strikeout upside in the world today to get you 12, 13 strikeouts across 8 innings and just go for 35, 40 fantasy points, and I would not be shocked. So, yes, I'm going to Justin Verlander. And then my next interest is going to be $4,000 cheaper. It's crazy, but look, Toronto has a low implied run total, 3.1, I believe, or somewhere around there against Walker Buehler. Detroit has the lowest on the slate, and we should go to that right now, actually, just to kind of finish up on Verlander take. Detroit is a 2.7, so lowest on the slate, lowest I've ever seen this year, I believe, is 2.7, so that ties that. And then Toronto is 3.1, so Walker Buehler actually has a nice run total against him to take advantage of, but I'm just not going to be getting there. I'd rather get to $600 more Verlander all day long. Patrick Corbin at $10,800, I don't have much interest in, but I do like the run total that Pittsburgh has, only 4 runs implied, but Patrick Corbin, tons of strikeout stuff, 32.1%, second highest on the slate behind Verlander, and gives up no power to lefties and strikes out a bunch of lefties. There'll be probably 4 to 5 lefties in Pittsburgh's lineup. My issue is, yeah, sure, they strike out 17.7% of the time, lowest in the league since the start of June against righties, but against lefties, they still don't strike out 21.8% of the time, and now you're pitching in a ballpark that is going to allow power. Corbin been very good at suppressing power, but overall for $10,800, he's sort of on the fence as what would be my 5th interest, and maybe somebody who gets into the podcast later today. But again, at that price point, if I'm going to be very heavy on Justin Verlander, I don't know how much of Corbin I get to, or really anybody else in the 10K or even 9K range for that matter. So Corbin's going to be interesting due to the low implied run total, due to just his overall dominating stuff and how he limits power. The matchup, though, usually doesn't have a lot of strikeouts in that lineup. More so has strikeouts against lefties and righties, so that's why I have some more interest in Corbin. So we can list him as an early interest at $10,800 if you do want to save $1,200 off of Verlander, but I'm going to be getting to a lot of Verlander. He's the best play on the slate, by far. We can just close it there and just say play Verlander and find whatever else you want to fit everything else in, because that pretty much seems how this slate's going to be. Julio Teheran, 3rd interest now. He was my 2nd, but outside of Corbin, $8,000 against Miami. It's a matchup against Miami. Miami also has a very low implied run total of 4.1, the 3rd lowest on the slate right now. There's one game we're still waiting on, but I imagine it's going to hold as a 3rd lowest on the slate. He's a huge 200 favorite. He's stunk against Miami this year, and he's had success. A 5.13 SIERA, disgusting. Meaning bad. 11% walk percentage, bad. 185 ISO to righties, very bad. Doesn't strike out really either side of the plate. 21.3 overall, 21.2 against lefties, 21.4 against righties. So very consistent against either hand. Not a ton here that I like overall from Teheran, outside of the matchup, outside of the fact that on this slate there's going to be a lot of guys who I believe are a little bit overpriced. Darvish, 10,000, I believe he's maybe 500 overpriced. Adam Wainwright's probably 500 to 1,000 overpriced at $9,000. Marcus Stroman is a great real life pitcher, but 8,400. Although it's somewhat cheap against Cleveland and maybe seems a little bit attractive, actually, the more that maybe I have to look at that more. I don't think I want to get there. Cleveland, though, I believe they have a low implied run total today. Let's look. Yeah, 4.1. So Marcus Stroman's somebody else who I'm going to have to look deeper into. But just overall strikeout upside not there for a guy who he lives on getting into the sixth inning in fantasy, really getting into the six and a third, 6 2/3, and trying to kind of piece together 4 or 5 strikeouts to limit the damage, which seems like Vegas thinks that they can do today. So Marcus Stroman, somebody else I'll look more into with Corbin for the podcast later, but we'll stick with Julio Teheran, $8,000. He's $15,400 over on Fantasy Draft. It comes out to being pretty much the same exact thing. And I should also point out that Verlander is $23,100 over on Fantasy Draft. It makes it pretty difficult to get to him, but you're going to find on Fantasy Draft, opposed from DraftKings, that there'll be some more pricing inefficiencies in terms of some hitters for stacking reasons, and you'll be able to get to stacks a lot easier over there. So Verlander becomes even more viable, in my opinion, on Fantasy Draft. Just because of the fact that, yes, he's going to be very expensive over there as well, but there's just going to be easier pieces to get to in terms of stacks because they're going to be priced differently, or just priced a little bit more inappropriately, less efficiently, in my opinion. So if you want to take advantage of Verlander being extremely easier to fit in, Fantasy Draft is probably a place to do it as well if you want to get more money down. So Julio Teheran, third favorite interest. Fourth favorite interest, or not fourth favorite, but just the fourth guy I'll talk about, is going to be Joe Musgrove. This guy is, again, the poster child of being $6,000 in the 6,000 or below range. And Washington doesn't have a huge look. They've been dominating, smashing the balls of late, but I believe they have a 5.1 implied run. All right, so it's already come up. Once I woke up, it was 4.9, which I liked. The 5.1 implied run total has now increased, which I was going to say it seemed pretty low, but a 4.39 Sierra in this range is pretty good. The guy that I want to get to the most is going to be even better. 5.5% walk percentage, and then he does strike out 24.6% of righties. Now, he's going to face lefties in this lineup, and a good amount of them. He's going to have to face Matt Adams. He's going to have to face Juan Soto. He's going to have to face, I'm trying to think who else is a lefty in that lineup. There's going to be at least 3 lefties in the lineup today. I believe Brian Dozier was a lefty, but he's injured now. So it's going to be a difficult lineup to kind of get through. Adam Eaton, I believe, is a lefty. So, yeah, it's going to be a difficult lineup for him to get through because he's going to face 3 or 4 lefties where he gives up a 216 ISO and strikes out 8% less batters, or 7% less batters. So Musgrove at 5,900. It's predominantly a price play. If the total continues to rise, 4.9 I liked for the price point, right? 5.1, 5.2, if it gets to 5.3, now it's getting to the point where, okay, this is getting scary. Vegas is betting this up a lot. So it seems like Musgrove should be cheaper priced than 5,900, if that makes sense. His total against him open at 4.9. That's what he's priced for. If it gets up to 5.3, 5.4, he should be really realistically priced at like 5,500 if that's where that's going to be factored in. But again, DraftKings is not dynamically priced. They price it statically at the beginning of the day, so you can take advantage or kind of fade those situations. So Musgrove is going to be very much so what that total ends up as. If it goes above the 5.1, if it starts hitting 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, I'm just not going to get to any because the final guy I have interest in is Adrian Houser. $5,200 Adrian Houser. They continue to disrespect this man in his price range. Look, I get it. St. Louis is now overall fully healthy. With the Yadier Molina coming back, they're now completely healthy. All their guys are back after having a month without the Carpenters, the Yadier Molinas, the Ozuna even a little bit longer. So 3.92 Sierra for Adrian Houser. Look, this is actually pretty ridiculous, but his Sierra on the slate is tied for the 4th best. You have Justin Verlander, you have Walker Buehler, you have Patrick Corbin, then you have Yu Darvish at 3.92, then you have Adrian Houser at 3.92. So tied for the 4th best, even though he's the 5th or the 17th most expensive pitcher on the slate. Now, the guy does a lot of things great. Like really good. 35.6% hard hit percentage, one of the better ones on the slate. 55.3% ground ball rate is the best on the slate, whether you're looking at the early or the night slate. And then a 25.5% fly ball rate is top 3 on this slate. So just the things he does are great. And then you also factor in, he strikes out 24.8% of lefties, 24.6% of righties. That's 24.7% of overall batters. If you want to price him based off of just Sierra, so let's look at this. You want to price him based off of Sierra? Like, I don't know why he's so low down here in terms of price. I imagine it's because he can't really work deep into the games, or at least in theory, people don't think he can. I think he can go into the 6 pretty fine. But if you want to price this guy based off of Sierra, he should be priced somewhere in the 10K range. Obviously, he's not a 10K pitcher, but he should be priced somewhere there. If you want to price him based off of hard hit percentage, he should be priced somewhere in the $9,500 range. If you want to price him based off of ground ball to fly ball ratio, he should be priced at 12,000. Like, I know I'm exaggerating here, but if you want to price him even off of strikeout rate, he should still be somewhere in the 9K range. So it's very interesting that Adrian Houser's price continues to be sort of broken on DraftKings, even though, sure, he has bad starts, but he's had good starts. And he's a quality pitcher who he's 5,200. We're getting a steal on this guy, in my opinion. Like, realistically, if he was in the 7K range on this slate, I'd still be interested. 8K range, I might be pushing it to be interested in, at least on this slate. So $5,200 Adrian Hauser, he's the exact guy that you can pair with Verlander. $17,200 in pitching total, and I think you get two of the better overall projections. It's probably going to be the most chalky pitching stack, I'd imagine, Verlander plus Hauser, just because the upside there is immense with Hauser. You get St. Louis, even when they're healthy, being a below average power team against righties, and they do strike out right around average for the league. Now, with all their bats back, maybe that goes down a little bit, but even then, it's just slightly below average for a guy who has average strikeout stuff at his price point. He gives up no power to righties. A 109 ISO to righties is the third lowest on the slate. The only places where Adrian Hauser worries me is he has an 8% walk percentage, which, again, it's not 10, 12, 13. It's nothing up that high, and he gives up a 240 ISO to lefty. So he's getting hammered by lefties, only a 1.29 home run per nine, but he's getting hammered by lefties. So in this lineup, his biggest threats are going to be a Matt Carpenter and a Dexter Fowler if they're both in the lineup. Those guys overall aren't the biggest power hitters like a Goldschmidt, a DeJong, and Ozuna in this lineup. So I'm not too worried. I think Adrian Hauser 5,200 at $9,900 over on Fantasy Draft as well, so he's just as cheap on Fantasy Draft. I think he's way too cheap for this slate. It's crazy to me that even on Fantasy Draft, he's going to be too cheap. So, that's where I'm at right now for pitching. I have interest a lot in Verlander. Corbin a little bit. We'll talk more about him on the podcast, maybe. Julio Teheran, Joe Musgrove, and Adrian Hauser. Musgrove, depending on what that Washington total does. But really, I don't know how I get to a lot of Musgrove when Hauser's $700 cheaper in a better matchup and overall a better pitcher, in my opinion, as long as he can get you to the fifth and have some win upside. But even if he can't, even if Adrian Hauser goes 4 innings, picks up 4 strikeouts, a strikeout per inning, goes 4 innings, and just limits the damage, what are you getting out of him then? 13, 14 fantasy points, even if you don't have the win upside, that's 5,200. He's definitely not crushing your lineup. So those are my interests so far. We'll talk about stacks later today in the Patreon podcast. You can get to that podcast and you can check it out. It's linked down below right now if you're interested. We'll talk about that later today. Also linked down below is the Fantasy Draft link if you want to go over to Fantasy Draft and check out how you can just more easily fit in Justin Verlander today, in my opinion. Fantasy Draft is linked down below as well in the description. And finally, last but not least, you can check out my NFL DFS course linked down below. Check that out. Let me know what you think about it. And hit the subscribe button before you leave. No WNBA today, no NFL today, so we're going to be doing some NFL preseason research. So appreciate it. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.